Hey, Devaito, please share the live stream link.
Yeah, I'm going to share that in a moment.
Okay, so hey, Devaito, please share the
Yeah, I have shared.
live stream link.
Yeah, I have shared the live streaming link in the chat box.
Give it to Facebook, LinkedIn. Okay, so okay, let me start with all your permission. Good evening, everyone. Devaito, may I start now?
Yeah, Somnata, please go ahead.
Okay, thanks. So, good evening, everyone. Hello, this is Somnath Mukhopadhyay. I'm an Execom member of IEEE CIS Kolkata and also serving as Associate Professor in the Department of Computer Science at Sikkim University, Gangtok. I am delighted to be the host for today's event. And welcome to session 4 of the IEEE CIS Kolkata lecture series on artificial intelligence and evolving intelligent systems. This event is organized by the IEEE Computational Intelligence Society Kolkata chapter as part of our ongoing technical and academic activities, which we are organizing every month. Before we begin, I would like to share some important information with all the participants and others who have not there in our last 3 lecture series. On January 10, 2023 meeting titled Brainstorming Session on Computational Intelligence and in Applications was held at TCS Office Kolkata. The meeting was organized by TCS Research and gathered a small group of experts from various disciplines to explore the opportunities for collaboration in the emerging areas of computational intelligence and its applications. Notable attendees included professors, scientists from some esteemed institutions, several IITs and ISI Kolkata, NIT Durgapur, IIST Sibpur, Banaras Hindu University, Jadavpur University, and the University of Memphis. The objective of the meeting was to establish a consortium comprising academic institutions, industries, projects, conferences, workshops, etc., to promote research in computational intelligence and its real life applications. Today's exercise is a outcome of that initiative and is supported by the consortium. Once again, I extend a warm welcome to all of you. Let's make the most of today's session beneficial for the researchers, academicians, and explore deep into the world of computational intelligence and its evolving intelligence systems. Moving forward to the inaugural session of the event, let me invite Professor Tandra Pal from National Institute of Technology, Durgapur. Also, she was the immediate past chair of IEEE CIS Kolkata to deliver the welcome address. Over to you, madam.
Thank you, Somnath. Greetings to all. On behalf of IEEE CIS Kolkata chapter, I express my sincere regards and welcome today's speakers, Dr. Nivedita Majumdar from Thermo Fisher Scientific at California and Professor Amit Rai Choudhury from the University of California. I welcome the distinguished invitees, the session chairs, and the other dignitaries present here. I am pleased to welcome the participants, faculty members, research scholars, and the students of different institutes and researchers of industries who are the target audience of the lecture series. The lecture series will be success only if they gain the knowledge of the recent advancements. Finally, I welcome the members of the consortium already mentioned by Somnath, without whom, that is the members of the consortium, the series would not have taken this shape. The lecture series already is being organized by IEEE CIS Kolkata chapter, one session per month with two eminent speakers, one from industry and one from academic institution. I invite all of you to join also the upcoming lecture session. Thank you. Somnath.
Okay, yes, madam. Now we are going to start the first lecture of today's entitled Algorithm Development in Biotechnology by Dr. Nivedita Majumdar from Thermo Fisher Scientific, California, USA. The session will be chaired and moderated by Professor Siddhartha Bhattacharya, current chair of IEEE CIS Kolkata chapter. Let me introduce Professor Bhattacharya. Dr. Siddhartha Bhattacharya holds a diverse academic background, including degrees in physics, optics, and a PhD in computer science. He has achieved several prestigious awards and recognitions, such as Distinguished HOD Professor and ICT Educator of the Year. His affiliations span various global institutions, including his roles as principal and scientific advisor of several institutions. With extensive contributions, he has co-authored many books, patents, numerous research papers. As an ACM Distinguished Speaker and IEEE Computer Society Distinguished Visitor, he maintains active involvement in esteemed professional societies. His research covers hybrid intelligence, pattern recognition, quantum computing, and many more. Beyond research, he's pioneered in leadership roles, founding AI associations, and holding editorial positions in several esteemed journals. So over to you, Professor Bhattacharya, to start the session.
Thank you. Am I audible to all of you?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, Somnath, for embarking on me, and I'm highly privileged for chairing this session, this esteemed session with the esteemed speaker, Dr. Nivedita Majumdar from Thermo Fisher Scientific. So before moving on, let me just introduce Dr. Majumdar to the audience. In brief, in 2002, Dr. Majumdar accomplished her MS degree at the University of Memphis, followed by a PhD from George Mason University in 2007. Over the past 15 years, he has been an integral part of Thermo Fisher Scientific in California, a global frontrunner in scientific services. Presently, she holds the esteemed position of Senior Manager, leading the algorithm development efforts for the digital PCR product line. Her role entails close collaboration across various functions, including software, hardware, systems, product management, molecular biology, field support, and legal departments. Notably, Dr. Majumdar has spearheaded the creation of annotated datasets aimed at empowering AI and ML algorithms. These efforts focus on the research use only and clinical segments of the digital and qPCR markets. Her contributions have extended to the publication of research in esteemed high-impact journals. Furthermore, her innovative work has been recognized throughout the acquisition of multiple US patents. Dr. Majumdar's professional interests encompass a wide variety of domains, including algorithm development, testing, modeling, signal processing, machine learning, and data visualization. So I'd request Dr. Majumdar to come on board and deliver his talk on algorithm development in biotechnology. Over to you, Dr. Majumdar.
Thank you, Dr. Bhattacharya. Thank you, Dr. Borman and Dr. Pal. and of course, Dr. Dashgupta for inviting me to this August forum. I'm going to give you a talk today on algorithm development in biotechnology. A very good evening to you, and a good morning and a good afternoon to others, wherever in the world you're joining from. I'm myself joining from San Francisco, California. It's around 6 o'clock in the morning here. And I'm here with my cup of tea. Can you see my cup of tea? I have been senior manager of algorithms and AI within the genetic sciences at Thermo Fisher Scientific for a while now. Let me briefly introduce Thermo Fisher Scientific beyond what was just said. We are, yes, a leading supplier of analytical instruments, life sciences solution, specialty diagnostics, laboratory, pharmaceutical, and biotechnology services. We are a company with an annual revenue exceeding 40 billion and a 10,000 people strong company. But let me start at the beginning. I grew up in Kolkata and studied computer science and engineering at Bengal Engineering College in Shibpur. And shortly after, I came to University of Memphis and met Dr. Dashgupta there. I did my master's in mathematical sciences, computer science concentration. My thesis was on anomaly detection using multi-level immune learning. And in fact, after I left the lab, many students, many capable colleagues have continued this work, and I'm always thrilled when I see this work going forward, baby steps of which I started back in the day. And then after my master's degree, I came to do my PhD in George Mason University. I started working on time frequency signal analysis. Specifically, I worked on EEG signals, and we were using ideas of radar signal processing in this particular field. Techniques are techniques, and they can be applied to data, as you know, which share similarities. And so EEG signals, we studied them, trying to understand their time frequency properties and whether we could predict certain events, such as onset of a seizure and so forth, from the data. That was kind of my work for my PhD thesis. At the same time that I started, I was doing my PhD thesis, I started working as well. And this proved to be a very important activity for me because it really made my learning real. My advisor at the time, Dr. Terence Barrett, also worked at the same company as a consultant, and that was a great connection for me. So what did I do at Shared Spectrum? So the word shared spectrum focus is, spectrum, there are people who pay money to be able to transmit over a certain bandwidth. And usually this is fine, but at times of crisis, these bandwidths begin to fill up, and there is not, there's a communication difficulty, a crisis that arises. And so what this company does is created smart radios, and what they were doing is they were listening on channels which may be empty at that time. And even if they were not the primary owners of the channel, they would jump onto that channel and transmit their data and be able to, facilitate communication, even in this scenario where, the normal channels of communication were clogged. It's a very interesting technology. And when I went there, I found that people would take spectrum analyzers and go take, drive around really empty places. They would bring up, the primary owner in a channel at certain locations along their route and see if their technology was able to sense the presence of that primary owner, jump channels, and continue to transmit the data in the manner that, this technology was designed to do. When I went in there, I'd get these logs of data coming in from spectrum analyzers and this log of data coming in from the sentinels being these primary owners of the channels. And I was asked to see, find a way to prove that our technology works. And it was a difficult challenge because it was a complicated problem. There were many dimensions to it. The data sources were not aligned, and my challenge was to extract the story from the data in a way that was possible for people to consume. And so this is what I came up with. So I figured out a way. Back in the day, I was using MATLAB. I used to be very good with MATLAB, would do anything with MATLAB. And I figured out a way to use the GPS location to, get a map of the area and plot the area over that immediately just by looking at this plot. People were, yeah, I drove that route. And it was like very visual, and the story popped for them immediately. As you can see here, the color tells the frequency in which the primary emission is transmission is happening. And these stars are time at which the sentinel, the primary owner of that channel, starts to transmit. So as soon as you sense that, we were able to change the frequency to a different one. And again, sensing that, were we able to change the frequency to a different one. So I made this little clip, and people at my job, our CEO used to fly a plane, and he was really happy to see this because he's very used to seeing this mode of data presentation. And immediately it popped to the people that what they were trying to do worked, and exactly what they were trying to do both began to make sense. So this proved to be a very powerful tool for not only the technologists to verify that what they were trying to do worked in the way that they expected it to work, but also for people to tell the story outward to other stakeholders, to funding agencies, and so forth. From this experience, I learned this important lesson. When I was going to school, my focus was more on the methods. But when I came to work, I realized my focus has to be totally on the problem, because I could solve it in many different ways. People are really interested in the problem, less so in my method, right? So I had a shift in my point of view. So I understand the problem and then the solution, and your data is the key. A lot of times we feel like we'll understand the problem better by talking to people. Well, yes, of course, there's a component of that, but people will not tell you exactly what they want. Like when I went into my first job, it wasn't immediately apparent to me what would make the story pop. So I had to understand what the problem was. I had to look at the data that was available to me. I had to come up with a way to tell the story that would make sense and that would make this technology sail. And out of that appreciation for data visualization, I came out with this book. It's been a few years now, and the point of showing this to you is this was a cookbook with functions for different types of visualizations that you can use with different types of data sets. And at the time, it provided me a very good overview of what is available. And I have since been always able to improvise on the fundamentals that I learned in my review and this work that I put together in this collection. And I encourage everyone since to really pay attention to this aspect. No matter how brilliant your method, how thorough your research, to be able to tell the story with solid data backing you is an important skill set everywhere, be it in academics or in the industry. Moving on, during this time in Memphis and Fairfax, my work, I was on the East Coast, and now I flew over to the West Coast. I followed my husband, who was doing his PhD in physics at UC Davis. And I found a job. I had also completed my PhD degree at the time. Then the company I joined was Thermo Fisher Scientific. And, all those instrument platforms you're seeing, I have worked on all of those. And it's 2019, and we have had 2 more since. So it's been a very rewarding journey. I joined as an engineer 3, and over the years, have grown in roles of increasing responsibility. 15 plus years at this company, 10 plus instrument platforms, 20 plus analysis softwares, 14 plus patents, 5 plus publications. So it's been a very interesting, enriching journey for me here, where very fortunately, I was able to continue the type of work I was trained to do in my graduate work. So let me talk about one algorithm and AI triumph that I like to share these days. With the COVID pandemic, RT-PCR has become a household name. Real-time PCR is a technology that came to the forefront as a primary solution for the testing that had to be done for COVID, right? And EUA is an emergency use authorization, and our company was one of the second tests worldwide to get approved for the COVID pandemic test kit. And I remember, like, our company's CEO promising the president that you'll have, 10,000 kits by the end of 2 weeks and 1 million kits by the end of the year, like really promising those numbers to a nation and a world waiting for this really important solution. It was a very interesting moment, a very, very profound moment for me to know that my work has such application. I was part of that initial team, EUA response team, that had responsibility for the algorithms and the software that went out with these test kits, and of course the instrumentation. Importantly, this was a very high risk, high stress situation because this test was going to scale. Millions of people were going to, take this test, and there was no tweaking parameters once it's out. Like our parameters had to stand that, had to be robust to that sample quality, to that, operator quality, and all kinds of different noise sources. It was a very interesting environment to work in. That's the QuantStudio 7 Flex real-time PCR system on which some of our initial tests were approved. And then eventually, within 6 months, we built this high throughput system where we had 2 QuantStudios and a whole lot of automation, collecting the prepped samples, going through the tests, generating the reports and so forth. The system was capable of doing 6,000 samples could be tested a day. So it was a significant enterprise. And again, I am both grateful and proud to have been part of this moment for our company. Let me introduce you to some of the challenges of instrument development that I have faced over my years. So remember, at the end of the day, it's a sample, either blood or some biological sample, and they'll mix it up with chemicals and they will try to collect some kind of signals out of it, right? Either it is either some dye is present, which is generating light, and you take a picture through a certain filter and that's your data, or there is an ionic transformation happening that you are going to need to catch. One of these things need to happen. And then we go into doing pre-processing. So if you have a picture, you have the usual problems, extracting the feature, right? Then you denoise, you smooth, you align, very standard pre-processing things that you need to do to your data in order to make it usable. Calibration, sometimes systems have these quirks and you can know what these quirks are and adjust your data accordingly. So, those are things we need to deal with. Modeling instrumentation, biological, chemical effects, right? Let me give you an example of a chemical effect, right? So sometimes, you have a certain probe that is going into your reaction and going to interact, well, let's say with COVID and produce a reaction. And another one maybe is interacting with, say, flu and is going to produce a reaction. Suppose you are infected with both, some such thing. Or maybe you're just infected with one. Let's take that case. But what can happen is the signal that the response that you're getting for COVID is really strong in that one direction, in that one dye, but you're getting some non-specific binding of those probes to the other stuff, which is not the target. that can happen. And as a result of which, the signal is not pure in just one direction. The other dye, which is, for example, testing for flu, is also reacting to a little extent, right? So you'll, instead of getting a perpendicular, if you imagine a 2D plot with the dye for COVID and the dye for flu, your curve, your response will be somewhat, tilted, because you're getting a little bit of flu, but mostly COVID. So these are chemical interactions that you need to keep in mind when you're parameterizing your algorithms, knowing some amount of spectral bleed, chemical bleed, biological bleed, some kind of instrumentation patterns that you need to take into account when you're doing the parameterization. Again, I'll go back to that example where I was talking about figuring out a way to parameterize the COVID test kits. So, right, eventually we had test kits where we had COVID, flu, RSV all together. So we could tell you which, you're having your cough, could do all those tests with one sample taken from you and could tell you what you have, or maybe you have multiple infections and so forth. But then, the data at the end of the day is, these dyes yielding their light. The light is not pure, it has a spectral signature. We have filters which are sitting on top of individual dyes, which correspond to individual probes, but there's always a little bit of, like this particular, the dye for COVID has a little bit of a leg in the same space as the filter where you're actually checking for flu. So we try to deconvolve this as best as we can, but there's always something residual, and as a result of which you might get this elevated response in that other dye, which is not specific to the test that you're running. Similar to that initial example of chemical effect that I was talking about. So again, we have to take all of this into consideration and set our thresholds, set our parameters, set our discrimination boundaries in a way that can give, do a good job of detection, look at false positives, false negatives, set our parameters exactly like you do in all standard machine learning applications. But yeah, this is a real use case, that scaled to millions of people during the COVID pandemic and, stood the test of all that. I was mentioning several times of pictures being taken. So obviously there's a lot of image processing happening under the hood in case of such an application. So what I have over here are, a few different formats. You've got 96 well scenarios, 384 well scenarios, 3000 well scenarios, 16 sample scenarios, each with 20,480 wells. So a huge range of different formats in which these tests are being run. I have only shown you 4 examples as, things that I have worked with myself. There is, of course, many other formats within this industry in which testing proceeds. And, normal problems like dealing with debris, there's a piece of dust, you need to separate that from your real response, right? Or distortion, you're taking a picture, what is in the center of the camera is really well spaced, is evenly spaced, or, toward the end, not so much, there's some sorts of vignetting sometimes, etc. There is blurring, things, you are taking images, and as I was mentioning, you have different filters corresponding to different dyes. And keeping everything in focus all the time is not an easy task. So, there is blurring artifacts you have to deal with, and non-uniform illumination. And this portion, just to, it's a biochemical thing. You have to excite it with a certain light, and then it emits the light which you catch. So the excitation light is the illumination portion. If you have not illuminated uniformly, then excited uniformly, then there are repercussions for that. So we have to keep all of these elements in mind when we are designing our image processing algorithms. And at a more macro level, normal versus abnormal features, and there are common events such as leak, these are liquids that you're running in these spaces. It may leak. There may be delamination, the sample is there. You seal the sample before you start taking pictures and so forth, right? But the seal may come off. You might have stuff like that. You might not have loaded the sample properly, or there may be some coating artifacts. All of this, we have to be robust to them, and we need to be able to detect them in our instrument development efforts. A key, one thing I want to mention is with biotechnology, we are very sensitive to risks. So while image processing has had tremendous advancements, especially with AI, a lot of that, and we leverage it. We definitely leverage AI on our platform for the QC detection, for example, and so forth. But it's not very directly applicable because, or I don't want to say not directly applicable. It's not, how do I say? It's not a very easily applied path. We have to really think carefully because failure, explainability, training bias are important considerations for us. And we have a very low tolerance for failures. And so it's not a model that can continuously evolve without control. And there's a lot of regulatory bodies looking over our work. So introduction of new technology and new techniques is slow and sure-footed in biotechnology, more so than maybe in another space. And also data is very expensive. Now, let's take the examples of anomalies, right? Normal data is very easy to find, anomalous data, not so much, right? And just to generate that data is expensive because of, sample costs, the reagent costs, the running costs. So it's a little bit of a different environment in which we function when we are thinking about AI and ML in the biotechnology world, specifically within this molecular diagnostics or qPCR, RT-PCR market space that I am most familiar with. And we found what works best a lot of the time is to join forces. And what I mean by that is you have few engineered features like statistical features or model fit features, like things that are important in making the conclusion you're trying to make, traditional algorithms. Then also used some learned features like your GAN or VAE or some pre-trained model features, combine forces, and you use an ensemble of models to, really make the call. Sometimes, this approach of actually combine and testing two algorithms together, like, one is wrong. If both agree, well, you've got a solid answer. If they do not agree, then figure out a way to kind of mitigate that. This kind of layered approach has worked the best for us, in my experience, in deploying AI into our technologies. Want to give you an example of a typical training pipeline. So for example, we have a lot of our data coming into the AWS data lake. We have customer data, relatively less, because customers are very sensitive about their data because it's associated with patient privacy and so forth. But when they come in, it's really useful because in R&D, most of our samples are run by experts, and it's a certain type, and the real world variability isn't as much. So we really value customer data highly, what we get of it. R&D data, manufacturing, QC runs, so we have that as our data source. And then we work really a lot on the annotation pipeline. So one of the things that we try to do is develop rule books. Like, you have a few experts, but experts think very, to get alignment between people with years of experience, we found was one of the most difficult challenges, especially in the context of a scientific application, because they have their nuances and they have their way of thinking, and how do you get them to calibrate across each other has been a tough journey. So develop rule books, use AWS active learning. So you throw up samples and you get, you get your annotators to, sorry, is there a line someone drew here? I don't know, maybe my mistake. Anyway, so yeah, you get AWS to supply that active learning, and we found some success with that in terms of improving our initial guess for the annotator to make it easier for them to give us annotations. And then we are constantly looking to improve the diversity of our data sets, right? So you do some kind of projections and so forth and figure out what is the distribution of your data, like how do you stratify such that you have enough examples everywhere. And you use mechanisms such as uncertainty sampling to enrich for useful data for which you have better information and improved information. And you try to constantly develop things to assess annotation noise, because your algorithm will only be as clean as good quality annotations as you're able to provide. So this has been a significant part of our efforts, both in terms of engineering, managing all of the data inputs, and then, of course, the AI ML techniques that we use to make annotation easier. And then you have to track models, right? It's continuously evolving. And again, we are very risk averse as far as our production code is concerned. So we have to be very careful about the models we are using. We have an extensive training pipeline on Amazon. Now, the SageMaker does a lot of this automatically these days, but back in the day when we were not a few, maybe a year or so ago, when we were developing this, we had to do a lot of this on our own. This is a very rapidly evolving area, of course. So you pull your repo, you spin up your Docker, so you have complete control of the environment. You install your code, you fetch the data from S3, and you run your modeling. Analytics is very important to get an understanding of what's happening. And your inference pipeline more or less mirrors your training pipeline. And then we need data science to kind of create this dashboard visualization again to communicate what's happening. Did we get better? Did our source of how's our annotation noise doing? How much annotation do we have in different categories and so forth? So it's a continuous improvement process. And once you have reached some semblance of stability, that's when you think of deployment in a certain configuration, kind of freeze that version and make sure that is not able to change, which is a very pertinent and important requirement in terms of regulatory bodies, right? You can't have your algorithm change underneath every time and produce different results every time. So we have to put a lot of control around that last stage once we are ready to deploy the models. And in fact, I would say a lot of this conversation is still happening, and people are trying to figure out what is the best way to do this, because even the regulatory bodies need help to understand how to process this technology. Without the proper awareness, they can't really make rules that make sense. So there is opportunity to contribute even on that end, not just on the development end of this side of the conversation. So I talked about the image processing aspects. I want to take a moment and talk about modeling in this digital PCR, which is something I have done for personally. I have publications in this area, so just wanted to give you a brief outline of this. So in the analog or the traditional qPCR, the tests that we did a lot during COVID, for example, the target, which is maybe your COVID samples, if it is present, it multiplies every cycle. So there is a heating cooling cycle going on, which is the polymerase chain reaction. Every cycle, as it goes, as it is running, the material amplifies, and then it produces enough light for you to see. So that's kind of the way it progresses. But for digital PCR, what we do is we take the material and we spread it into a number of different partitions, very many, like 20,000 or so partitions. And what happens is, if you had one COVID in the background of a lot of other stuff in your main reaction, could have been a challenge to see that COVID. But in this digital in this partitioning scheme you did, that particular molecule becomes isolated against a much smaller background, and therefore it gives it a really good chance of actually amplifying without any issues. So that's one big advantage, really sensitive. And additionally, you can use this Poisson, you can model this as, think of this as a Poisson process, right? Whether a particular through hole will get a molecule or not. And if you try to model this as a Poisson process, at the end of the process, when you're taking a picture, light is going to shine in all those wells that got molecules and not shine in those where there was no molecule, right? It's very easy to count where no light is shining. I mean, you don't know whether there was 1 or 2 or 3 molecules when a particular well has lit up, but you definitely know nothing was there in the wells where no molecules were there. It's kind of dark, right? You can look at the proportion of wells that have remained dark and fit it to this Poisson model probability of K equals 0, no molecules, right? And you can find out the concentration of your of the initial sample you were testing. And this method is really useful in that, again, it's very sensitive, it's very precise. And so digital PCR is really the next generation of PCR that's under development. Even now, the cost is a little bit higher for digital, so therefore it is not as widely adopted. But for oncology applications where high sensitivity is crucial, and for some other applications in the pharmaceutical industry, this model is really, really gaining traction. Yeah, so 2015, I think this paper came out on the sensitivity dynamic range. Dynamic range is the range of concentrations you can measure. Like you can imagine, right? If everything lights up, then you can no longer use digital PCR. So it's got a very definitive range over which it can give you this benefit, this digital PCR benefit. So this particular paper really looks into modeling these things and help you understand the strengths and weaknesses of the digital PCR as a technology. And then one of the further things we went on to do is, we are treating this as a Poisson process. So if you have individual, you are assuming that every partition is equal sized, right? Every partition here is equal size. So the probability of that it ending up is the same in everything. But you might have a situation where your filling is not exactly like that. So you have some variability in your load volume of the individual array through holes. Or maybe people are doing a droplet digital PCR where, it's not an array in which they're dividing it. They're just taking the whole thing and breaking it up into many, many droplets. So again, the droplet size is the equivalent of the partition. And in order to apply Poisson statistics, you need to make sure that your droplets are equally sized. And we kind of went in to investigate what if they're not. And this is a graph showing your lambda, your concentration range, and your precision. Your precision begins to really fall at your higher end as you have higher and higher variation in the load volume in the partition sizes. So, we went and modified this Poisson algorithm to this Poisson plus quantification system, where we take care, if you know what is the level of variability in your load volume, then we can account for that in the Poisson model and still get you really good, accurate quantification. So that's another paper that I wrote with my co-authors, and it's kind of really, in the digital PCR, we are often cited and considered somewhat of an expert. I wanted to quickly touch upon generative AI because it is in conversations everywhere right now in industry, in academia, around how you can leverage. So in a sense, you remember I began the talk by saying, focus on the problem and then think about the solution. Well, in generative AI, we're actually doing the opposite. We have a solution and want to find a problem in which to apply it. And sometimes you have to do that, for sure. Little history. In 2015, I remember OpenAI, Atari games, they were playing that. And I remember a conference when I kind of saw that and didn't really know what to think of it. In 2017, this paper came out, Attention is All You Need. And it created quite a stir at that time. And then in 2018, GPT-1 was released, GPT-2 was released, and I wasn't paying all that much attention, honestly. I was... And then in 2022, ChatGPT came out, and oh my God, the world was a different place since then. And so I have, tried my hand as a personal hobby endeavor with some of the some Stable Diffusion and also with Midjourney. And this is one of the prompts I gave. Black background alien holding out a quantum computer, and this is the picture Midjourney generated for me. And is that how a quantum computer looks? Who knows? I mean, it's not exactly, accuracy isn't its thing, but it's really interesting in terms of what it is able to do. And so I asked ChatGPT to write a poem. I didn't like it much. I think it was terrible. But you have to figure out what it is that the tools are capable of doing and what it is that you want the tool to be doing. My point of going into this is to kind of make the point that we are all learning the strengths and weaknesses of this technology and all trying to figure out what is the right fit. My top use case has been a brainstorming partner. So I run a lot of, in my role, I run a lot of brainstorming meetings to put ideas together to build roadmaps on how we should solve a particular problem. And ChatGPT is a really good partner. You can ask it very, very many questions. And after about 10 of the most obvious, really interesting answers begin to emerge. I have noticed this. And it's all, the human in the loop is crucial to getting this thing to work. But it's really interesting, the ideas it comes up with. We are looking into trying to see if we can use it for data simulation, for, what's the next experiment I should plan, that kind of an idea based on the current results and so forth. And of course, contextual help is an important area where people are trying to get the language models. And I've heard Dr. Dasgupta's talk on generative AI, and rogue use cases are spinning up faster than you can imagine. So we've all got to be conscious of that risk and how to manage it as we use these technologies. So lesson 2, at the end of this piece, I want to say 10,000 hours plus, and this is a nod to Malcolm Gladwell's book where he says you've got to at least spend 10,000 hours to become an expert on something. And I have put in my 10,000 hours and more in algorithm development over the last 15 years. And I've learned that you've got to find the underlying theme of the problem that you're looking at. Themes repeat themselves and often ideas that you can borrow. And a lot can be done with little. So not to feel overwhelmed by the array of tools and technologies out there, and really focus on your strengths. And English is a programming language, which is a really nice development, and looking forward to using all the generative AI enabled IDEs to kind of write better code. Another theme I wanted to bring up for you is it takes a village. Like when I studied computer science and I was training to become an algorithm developer, I hadn't the slightest idea that that role can burgeon into all these different roles in an industry environment. So I started as an algorithm developer, and I've become somewhat of a people, a manager, and a tech lead right now. But there are so many other flavors in which you can bring your knowledge to bear and in gainful employment, right? Be an algorithm test engineer, a software tester, software developer. These are probably you're familiar with. I don't know if you've ever thought of business analysis, a good business analysis that takes the problem, deconstructs it right, and writes good requirements and specification for software to, work on is invaluable asset on project teams. And if you have a technical mindset, if you understand the challenges of both sides of this coin, you are really, really valuable partner. Intellectual property attorneys. I was mentioning, while I work with patent attorneys, it has been my experience that people who have degrees in electrical engineering or computer science get it much easier, and that communication is much smoother. So, and it's a really, really lucrative opportunity for, if you're so inclined to pursue. Quality. So, in our world, in the biotech world, quality and regulatory, quality is important to everyone. Every company strives to make better, right? But regulatory is kind of more important for us because we're dealing with human beings, and impact is, it's quite high. So quality and regulatory, again, FDA, as I was mentioning, is trying to come up with the rules by which to regulate this emerging technology field. And if you are a technologist that is in a position to advise them by being part of their teams, I think that, they are looking for people like that as well, right? Then manufacturing. How am I doing with time? Okay, a few more minutes. Manufacturing, tech writer, operations, UI UX designer. So really my point of bringing the slide together is to encourage all of us to think about these other areas in which you can and should think to extend your vision, your reach, and really help with things. So lesson number 3 from the second piece is communication. It's very important. It's very important to know your core technologies, be efficient there, but it's also very important to communicate all of that to all these stakeholders that I mentioned, and maybe even beyond. I didn't even bring in the business side of the equation into this picture. So over the last couple of years, I have worked on increasing my outreach, really beyond of my technical and professional colleagues to other forums, to really increase the, spread my message, spread my epiphanies and understandings and learnings as far and wide as I can. And within that context, I started in 2021 this Go Dream Big. It's a it's a mentorship program. We've got a bunch of professional women who participate in it, and I invite others all the time to join our forum, where students can reach out and have meaningful conversations. You want to be a professor, you want to be a UX designer, you want to be a film broadcaster. We have all kinds of people in our group, and we can help encourage that. In 2022, I published a book on a historical fiction called Deflected. It's based on the life of Radhanath Sikdar, who was a mathematician from the 19th century, who worked to calculate the height of Mount Everest and therefore discovered it in some sense. Important here is, why I want to mention is he was one of our data scientists, one of the earliest data scientists, right? He kind of made sense of all the measurement data and used atmospheric, refraction was a big deal. So direct measurement never showed Mount Everest as the tallest. So there was complicated mathematics involved and so forth. And I also felt this is an important piece because it highlights the contributions of an outstanding hero. And it was an interesting time. We in this world today work across cultures all the time. And that was a period in time where this experiment happened in our own Kolkata. And how did that evolve? It's worth paying attention to and kind of thinking about. And, our novel is really been received well so far. I encourage you to give it a try and, leave us your thoughts. And finally, I want to talk about this year's endeavor, which I am starting, which is goedis.com. It's an effort where I want to make machine learning accessible with school level math. And really, in our education systems today, data is the new oil, but we are not giving our children this education. If you go to a very good school, maybe you learn some programming, but this machine learning should be accessible to students at the with school level math, and we really spend time to develop this curriculum. We are not requiring any advanced mathematics, no programming experience. We teach a little bit of basic Python programming. This is not a programming class, but we teach a little bit of basic Python programming with these code trail maps that really it conveys the idea of how to step-by-step solve problems. Our material has pen and paper programming exercises to provide adequate practice. And it's really structured way. It's really connected also to the math that is being taught in school. So I wanted to bring this up to you because you are all enthusiasts and practitioners of machine learning. I definitely encourage you to go check out our website and kind of get a little bit better sense of what this curriculum is about, and any collaborations and interest in that I would definitely encourage. Yeah, just one last point, maybe. Like, it really begins from the basics, rates and slopes, and takes you through the entire machine learning workflow. And so hopefully it's really an effective tool. We've run one pilot program, and this student of grade 11 and grade 10, and it was really effective for them. And we got good feedback. So yeah, there you are. Thank you for your attention. And yeah, please connect with me on LinkedIn, and let's stay in touch and see how we can be mutually beneficial to each other. I'm open for questions.
Thank you, Dr. Majumdar, for your enlightening speech. I hope the audience has been benefited. In fact, we can always collaborate in this direction for further outcomes. Now let us if there is any question from the audience, you can just put a question, and you can come on board and ask the question to Dr. Majumdar. Anyone?
Yeah, may I? So I'm Arjit Ukil from TCS Research. So I have a question to Dr. Majumdar. So one is a generic question, first one. How AI is receptive towards the medical community? So if you want to have a biomedical AI in place, so one of the main stakeholders are the medical practitioners. So do you feel they will be comfortable to use AI, even if they are not, we are not, or AI is not replacing them, but even if AI is assisting them? So that is number
Yes,
one. And number two also, yeah, patient-centric way also. Will the patient be comfortable to have an AI to diagnose them instead of a doctor?
Yeah, so I think there is a lot of opportunity to work together here. As I said, the risk appetite is really low, right? So you have to be really careful. And one of the biggest things with AI is training bias and explainability. Those are important factors. So you raise really good questions. And but even then, the power of this technology is such that it is being exploited in the medical community, absolutely. But there's always a human in the loop that is making the ultimate calls. And I don't see that going away anytime very soon. But I think it's a work in progress, and the better controls we put in place, the more the adoption will be. And I think you also asked around patient comfort. I think, so this is an interesting question, and I feel like the awareness of around the strengths and weaknesses of this technology is still evolving. I mean, the public doesn't quite know what to make of it. And so the regulatory bodies and science journalism, I think, is going to play a big role in establishing how the public thinks of these technologies in the future. And that will influence how ready they are to adopt these solutions.
Okay, can I have a question?
Yes, sir, please.
So it was a wonderful talk, eye-opening, and it will encourage many of the participants who are there, and I'm assuming it will be also put in LinkedIn and other areas. But one thing I'll request you, because of your diverse effort, not only on your company, but educating people, can you take some active role in moving this initiative that we started? I think almost a year or half a year. That will be excellent opportunity, because so many talents out there, but they don't have the outlet. So when we started discussing that, and Dr. Saurabh Kundu is here from Japan, we talked about that people from that part of the country are so successful in many other areas, but why can't we give back something so that we can see that a lot of companies are moving there and businesses are booming, all these things. And if you can take core part, and Dr. Chandrapal, Arpanpal, and many of these teams, yeah, they're very dedicated. And if you can guide that or take part in that, I think we can do a lot of good things. So I think I'll appreciate this continued effort and by the IEEE CIS chapter, but we have to be inclusive, and that inclusiveness, how we can bring together is very important. It is not only for us, next generation after next. So I can see that since AI ML is booming, and that is a place where it has so many experts and talents, we can make a game-changing effort.
Yeah, I'm completely in agreement with you, Dr. Dasgupta, and I would be thrilled to help in whatever way I can your efforts. Because yes, I do care about not only the next generation. In a sense, it's for all of us. Our image improves in the world if we are able to work together and create this presence of really a talented group of people whose labors you can leverage in all the great work that's going on in the world. So I'd be very happy to help.
Thank you.
I have a quick question,
Please.
if that's okay. Yeah, we heard very interesting applications and very interesting ways that you have developed different algorithms for digital PCR. And we understood that digital PCR is actually quite advantageous compared to the wet method or the qPCR. One of the things I did not clearly understand is where exactly you're using AI in the digital PCR. Is it in droplet variability? Where you're actually using it?
The AI right now for digital, the applications are in the core data that is getting collected. So the samples are run on these arrays, pictures of arrays that I was showing you, right? And we have to, process, first of all, QC those arrays, opportunity for AI. Then, all kinds of feature extraction, smoothing, and those pieces that I was describing, you do those pieces to actually extract the data. Like for this probe, this amount of signal came out from this well. So that processing step, we can use AI. You can think about AI as a classifier for normal, abnormal partition, for example. So those are the kinds of ways in which you get that primary data. And then you move into modeling. At least in this particular application, that's the pathway in which there may be other opportunities in, once the signal has been extracted, there may be other opportunities as well to incorporate AI, but we haven't.
Yeah,
really
that's what I was a little bit confused because QIAGEN actually has developed a lot in the area of digital PCR, and it's one of your competitors, but they have actually used a lot of AI in understanding the droplet variability and other areas, and exactly extracting the data, smoothing it out, and other things. So I was not I could not understand clearly. And,
Yeah,
and
we use conventional statistics in that direction. And I feel, conventional statistics is actually pretty powerful
already
technique,
to do this, yeah.
right? So that has been very, very rewarding. And our platform, which is the Absolute Q platform, is now, making inroads into QIAGEN's business.
Are you also developing some ways to generate artificial data to,
I mentioned
generative AI or something like that to generate the artificial data?
So as I mentioned, yes, data simulation is an important piece, right? Our data is really expensive. And but whether or not generative AI can be directly used to generate realistic data is something we have to explore as we move forward, because at the end of the day, even your generative AI models depend on data on which it was trained. And there has to be some source of truth. And then the thing is that simulated data, one of the biggest worries is that it introduces its own bias. And we can't afford that. Right.
Yeah,
so there are many challenges there, but of course it's an area we are actively looking to understand how to leverage.
Thank you. That's all.
Thank you for the question.
Thank you, madam. Thank you very much. And over to you, Shobnath, because I hope that we can start with the second session now.
Thank you very much.
Okay, sir. Yes, thank you. This was extremely useful and interactive session from Dr. Nivedita Majumdar, and also my sincere thanks to Professor Siddhartha Bhattacharya for chairing and moderating this session. Now, moving forward to the second lecture, entitled Towards Unsupervised Learning in Computer Vision, by Professor Amit K. Roy Choudhury from University of California, Riverside, USA. To chair and moderate this technical session, may I invite Professor Paramatha Datta from Vishwabharati University. Professor Paramatha Datta, born in 1966, BStat honors, MStat, MTech in computer science, all from Indian Statistical Institute, and PhD in engineering from Bengal Engineering and Science University, Shibpur. Presently, Indian Institute of Engineering and Science and Technology. He is currently a professor in the Department of Computer and System Sciences, Vishwabharati University. He is a fellow of IE, fellow of IET, fellow of IET UK, senior member of IEEE, also senior member of ACM. He is the recipient of prestigious awards such as Distinguished Scientist in Computer Science and Engineering Award in 2018, conferred by Venus International Foundation. Excellence in Science and Technology Award in 2018, conferred by Indian Science Congress Association, Government of India. INSA Teacher Award in 2019, conferred by the Indian National Science Academy, Government of India. Lifetime Achievement Award in 2020 by VD Good Technology Factory. Lifetime Achievement Award in 2020 by Science Further Global Faculty Award in 2020 by AKS Education Awards. International Scientist Award in 2021, conferred by International Research Award, England. Dr. Datta has 10 authored books, 22 edited books, around 300 research articles published, accepted for publication in various esteemed journals, conference proceedings, and book chapters in edited volumes of highly reputed international publishing houses. And he also has published 17 patents, some are granted. Dr. Datta has guided 14 PhD awarded scholars and one student is submitted apart from 8 who are registered scholars pursuing their PhD under his supervision. So welcome, Professor Dotto, and over to you.
Thank you, Somnath. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
So thank you very much, and thanks to the organizers for hosting such a very useful and interesting event. So I have been interested to chair the session. I sincerely express my gratitude for that. It's my honor. So let me, without wasting time, let me introduce Professor Amit Rai Chaudhuri, who is the learned speaker for this session. Amit Rai Chaudhuri received his PhD from the University of Maryland, College Park, in electrical and computer engineering in 2002, and joined the University of California, Riverside in 2004, where he is a professor and Bone Family Faculty Fellow of Electrical and Computer Engineering, Director of the Center for Robotics and Intelligent Systems, and cooperating faculty in the Department of Computer Science and Engineering. He is the director of the DoD Center of Excellence, Network Configurable Computing, Communications, and Control for Rapid Situational Awareness. He leads the Video Computing Group at UCR, working on foundational principles of computer vision, image processing, and statistical learning, with applications in cyber physical, autonomous, and intelligent systems. He has published about 200 papers in peer-reviewed journals and conferences. Professor Raichaudhuri's research has been supported by various US federal and state agencies and private industries, including the NSF, DoD, Google, Amazon, and Cisco. He is the co-author of 2 monographs on camera networks and target tracking. Some of his work has been featured widely in the news media, including a PBS National Geographic documentary and in The Economist. He is a senior associate editor of the IEEE Transactions on Image Processing, an associate editor of the IEEE Transactions on Pattern Analysis and Machine Intelligence, been an area chair of multiple computer vision and machine learning conferences, and on the program committees of many conferences. His students have been first authors on multiple papers that received Best Paper awards at major international conferences, including ICASSP and ICMR. He is a fellow of the IEEE and IAPR, received the Doctoral Dissertation Advising Mentoring Award 2019 from UCR and the EC Distinguished Alumni Award from UMCT. With this, may I invite Professor Rai Chaudhuri to deliver his lecture. Professor Rai Chaudhuri, please.
Thank you very much. Doctor, can you hear me? Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Yes, sir. Okay. Yes.
I will put the slides in the slide share mode. Can you see the slides?
Yeah, it's visible.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so thank you, Mr. Doctor, for the introduction. It's my pleasure to give this talk today. I do not know very much about this particular group, but it's always nice to be talking to a wide variety of people with a wide variety of interests, discussing about the work. So I will present a little bit about what we have been working on over the last 5 years or so. If there are any questions, you can stop me in between, or we can discuss at the end. I have tried to keep my talk to about 30 minutes, so hopefully we'll have time for discussions at the end. So the title of the talk is Towards Unsupervised Learning from Video. And I'll be talking about applications in video recognition, object and activity recognition, on camera networks, and on vision language processing on video and multimodal data sets. This is work that largely is led by my students. So many of them have recently graduated and are in and are working in very good places at in many of the research institutions across in the US and outside. These are some of the publications. This is a slightly dated, but I will be talking about some of the newer work that we've also been doing. So most of these works have been published in machine learning and vision conferences like CVPR, ICCV, NeurIPS, and so on. So the research projects in our group, this is a sampling of some of the research projects that are currently ongoing. The overall theme across almost all of these works is learning with limited supervision. That is, we have lots of models nowadays, and we need to be able to use these models for inference tasks. However, the models by themselves do not always work. If you just take a pre-trained model and apply it to some task, they will not give good results. You'll usually need to adapt these models to whatever application domain that you're interested in. However, in the process of applying these, we have to be aware of the fact that we will not have a lot of supervised data to be able to adapt these models to the application domain. And this is where the whole focus on limited supervision comes in. So I have multiple trained models, I have a test scenario, and I need to be able to use these models for my inference case, for my testing case. So within this big picture, we have been working on various problems. And I'll give a sampling of some of the problems that we have been working on. So camera network scene analysis. This is about being able to do scene understanding across a network of cameras. Image and video enhancement. This is important because in many cases, we do not have the highest quality data that is available, and we need to be able to enhance the data before we are able to analyze them. Joint image and text analysis. This is where we have worked on being able to correlate between textual data and image or video data. And this is something that has become a lot more exciting with all these generative models and ChatGPT and so on being able to understand the correlations between vision and language data in a more robust manner. We have been working on problems in robot learning. This is something that I've gotten into more recently. And here, the idea is, again, you have models that, based on which robots have been trained, can these models be applied to novel scenarios? For example, when the structure of the robot has changed, the embodiment has changed, or when the viewpoints are different, and so on. An application domain where I have done quite a bit of work is on biological image analysis, specifically on cell tracking across image stacks. And another area where we have been doing quite a bit of work recently is on adversarial machine vision, where the focus is on providing robustness to adversarial attacks on machine vision algorithms. And how do we design such attacks, and how do we defend against attacks? So with that, let me get into some of the details here. And I'll start off by motivating why we look into this problem of limited supervision. We all know that annotation is hard. So if you consider an object detection problem, annotation involves being able to label all of these different objects in a data set, which is obviously extremely difficult to do at scale and extremely tedious job. For videos, this becomes even more challenging because now not only do you have to label the objects, but you have to label the time periods in which some of these activities happen. So you have to watch the entire video and label the different time segments. Segmentation, another very challenging task for labeling, because you literally have to label each and every pixel in an image. And again, this is impossible to do at any scale. And in robotic tasks, if you want to train a robot to do different tasks via, say, imitation learning, again, labeling would involve providing a very large number of examples for each activity. And obviously, that is not scalable, because the whole idea of how many activities you train this robot on is itself not something that's not scalable. With this, if we now look into the the different tasks in vision and robotics that we have been focusing on, these tasks can be broadly classified into classification tasks, where we have an image or a video and we want to do categorical prediction, or they could be looked upon as localization and segmentation tasks, where again, I'm given an image or a video and I want to be able to segment out a temporal sequence, or I want to be able to segment out a particular spatial region. Or it could be dynamical tasks, where there is a start state and a goal state, and a dynamical system has to evolve from the start state to the goal state through a set of actions and through intermediary states that these actions take the system into. This is the high-level representation of how we can model some of these tasks, for which, as I mentioned, limited supervision is necessary. What is limited supervision in these cases? So limited supervision itself can be of different forms. So for a classification task, it could be that the source is labeled, but the target data set is unlabeled. For the segmentation tasks, the motion segmentation or the image segmentation tasks, it could be that we are provided with weak labels. That is, we know that this particular video segment or this particular video has these activities, but we do not know the details of where each of those activities happen. While for dynamical tasks, it could be that we have a certain number of expert demos, but a very limited number, and we have certain sub-goals that we need to reach, rather than being able to provide details for all of those, or for all of the actions, and being able to learn from all of those actions. If we think about the kind of supervision that is provided here, so there could be what is called a transfer of supervision. That is, you could have supervision from the source data to supervision that is provided on the target data, or supervision that is provided as the system evolves. This is more like an active learning framework. Or there could be issues about the level of supervision. That is, what is the fidelity of the supervision that is provided? Do you provide labels for each and every object, or do you provide supervision across the entire sequence, or supervision across a set of labels, and so on? So I will now get into some of the specific research problems that we have worked on. I'll give certain examples. So the first one that I'll talk about is of action localization in video. And the level of supervision that is provided here is on video level labels. That is, the labels are provided for the entire video sequence, or the labels just say that these activities occur in the video, without getting into the fine-grained description of the level of supervision. That is, we don't have labels. So this is actually a good example. So if I have a particular video segment, then fine-grained labels would tell me exactly where each activity is happening, while a video level supervision will just say that within this video, there are these activities that have happened, without providing a fine-grained supervision. So the latter is much more easy to provide. In fact, it could probably be provided even automatically, and through automatic captioning systems. And the question now is, can we learn from these kinds of weak labels that are provided? Okay, so these are easy to acquire. They can be even obtained from tags on the web, but can we use these models or use these kinds of labels to learn from this geosequence? So strong, again, in strong versus weak supervision, this is another way in which we can represent this. A strong supervision is to be able to provide points that like labels for each of these points. These are green, these are blue points, these are orange points, and so on, while these are outliers. Well, weaker levels of supervision would just say that this cluster of points corresponds to a particular activity or a particular object and so on, without getting into the fine-grained representation of each of those points. So in weak supervision, we are provided with this kind of a representation, that is, a cluster of points has a certain label, another cluster of points a certain label. And since this is a weak supervision, of course, we don't have precise labels for points, so there could be certain ambiguities over here. So you could have a set of points that in reality span the orange and the blue classes, but the weak label basically provides for, basically says that this cluster of points has a certain label. That is, this whole cluster of points corresponds to a certain object or a certain activity, but they will not be precise because I do not have the exact label for each and every point. So how do we go about doing using this kind of supervision for the task of activity localization? So activity localization, as I showed in the first slide, is the problem of localizing a certain video segment to belong to a particular activity. So I'll give you an intuitive understanding of how we can go about doing it. So let's say that there are two videos, video 1 and video 2, and there are these segments, the blue segments, and there is a correlation, high level of correlation between them, while the gray ones have a lower level of correlation between them. So the idea of using this would be to pull together the parts of the videos that have a high level of correlation closer together, while pushing apart the ones that do not have that level of correlation farther apart. So the way this could be done is first by starting with the video segment and then representing it in terms of basically a collection of frames. And then, since we know that there are these labels, and let's say that I have the same label in two video sequences. So that tells me that in that video sequence, or in these two video sequences, there is some portion that is similar. So if I can figure out which portions are similar, I can pull them together and say that these portions correspond to the activity, because that activity label occurs in both the video sequences. So for example, if the activity of let's say cricket bowling is seen in two video sequences, so that label exists, but I don't know exactly where that activity happens. The existence of the label tells me that there are certain parts of those two videos that must be similar. So if I can identify those two parts and pull them together, then that is where that can be used to learn that particular activity. So this is where the attention mechanism comes in. That is, there are certain parts in these videos that I attend to, and I pull the relevant features of that category, and then I have obtained the pulled irrelevant features, and the relevant features are pulled together while the irrelevant features are pulled apart. And this could be used to identify the activity sequences. And that could be used to identify where a particular activity occurs. So I'll show you a demo here where this person is playing a particular instrument. And you will see that you'll see certain labels appearing in certain parts of the video. And these are the portions that the system is able to identify as the portions where that activity happened. So this was obtained through a purely weak supervision mechanism, but the results we are able to localize in a particular video segment that a particular this is automatically now this label disappears. Okay, so similarly here you'll again oh, so these are automatically identified within the video sequence, and the contribution of our work over here was to be able to recognize these activity segments based on the on a very weak level of supervision that was provided. Instead of providing labels for the activities themselves, it was to provide the label for the entire video sequence. Similarly, this is a moment retrieval problem where we have again a long video sequence, but we have a sentence here or a query sentence, or another, so like a man holding a camera comes into view. So this is happening only in a particular portion of the video. Can we identify where that moment happened? And again, this is very, very hard to label, because somebody has to watch the video and provide these kinds of labels over lots, I mean, ideally thousands of videos, which is very, very hard to do and a very tedious task. So we started off again with very weak labels, that is just the existence of certain activities. And then we are able to identify where in this particular video segment, this particular problem of text-based localization of moments, this is a very interesting problem. It's a very relevant problem because you often have lots of data. You could have, for example, video sequences captured from a UAV and reports that are provided from the ground. Can you provide correlation patterns between these? And can you identify these correlation patterns through very limited levels of supervision? So we worked more on this problem, on the text-based localization of moments. And one of the problems that we have worked on over here, again, in this overall framework of weak supervision, is that we are provided with particular label, with a particular query, but we need to be able to identify where that activity happens, not in one video sequence, but in a corpus of videos. So this is also important because you often have a large volume of videos, and being able to identify even the video in which a particular activity happens is not easy, because if you have 100 videos, somebody has to watch those 100 videos and identify that these 5 videos are relevant. So even that problem of being able to move away from knowing which video a particular activity happens and look for it in a corpus of videos is important. And this is where our work on text-based localization of moments in a video corpus comes in. So again, I have a query, like a person puts clothes into a washing machine. And the goal here is to retrieve the correct video as well as localize the correct moment. And the way we do this is by identifying a joint embedding space, where the idea is that we obtain features from this video, and from these features, we pull together the features that are close to, or features that are relevant, and push apart features that are farther away. So for example, this actually explains the process so let's say that the star represents, in some embedding space, this point is the one that we are interested in, and we have lots of video features. So some of these video features are related and some of them are not. So we look for video features that are similar and the ones that are dissimilar. So the ones that are dissimilar, they are pulled away from each other and from the ones that are similar, while the ones that, sorry, they're pulled apart from each other, while the video features that are similar, they're pulled close together, and they are also pulled towards the optimal point that we are after. So if this optimal point is over here, then features that are relevant would be pulled towards this optimal point, while the ones that are not relevant will be pulled farther away. So that allows us to identify segments that correspond and segments that do not correspond. So for example, these 3 red segments over here, they do not correspond to the activity, the query of the person putting clothes into a washing machine. And these features are, or these video segments, based on their features, are pulled apart, while this particular video segment where this person is putting clothes into the washing machine, that particular segment is relevant, and that is pulled towards the particular activity of interest. So this is how we are able to localize a particular video segment in a corpus of videos. So this is about our work in video moment localization. So this is a temporal localization problem. That is, I'm given a corpus of videos and I want to find out the video segment in which in a particular query happens. Next, I'll move on to the problem of spatial segmentation, where the idea is that I have trained models for segmentation and I have no image level. So I have no labels in order to be able to use these segmentation models on some new data sets. Again, segmentation is a very, very difficult task in terms of labeling, because you have to label each and every pixel, and we want to move away from that particular model. So let's say that I have a semantic segmentation task. So I have this video, and the semantic segmentation task is to be able to segment out each of these particular regions, as well as provide labels for each of these segments. To be able to do this, I need a pixel-wise annotation of each of these points, which is extremely expensive to provide. So what we would want to do is to be able to get away from this pixel-wise annotation. So these kinds of annotations are often obtained from simulation scenes, where this becomes a much easier task. But then the question is, given a model that we have, how do we apply it to a target scene where there is a domain gap between the source and the target, and then use this domain gap to be able to adapt the segmentation model? And we want to do this adaptation with almost no, without any annotation, or with very minimal levels of annotation in the target domain. So here are some videos that I will play. So this is the input video. Then here is the video with absolutely no adaptation. And you can see some of the errors that are occurring in different parts in the segmentation. So let me pause these. This is when we learn with some limited supervision. So this is with some pseudo image level labels. And this is with weakly supervised domain adaptation. So, so the difference between these two is that when we provide weak domain adaptation with image labels, we provide labels at the level of the entire image, that this image has a car, has trees, and so on. And that provides some level of supervision, while this is without any supervision at all. And this is purely with pseudo labels. That is, you have the model, you run the model through the image, and the labels that you get, you refine those labels. So these pseudo image labels provide you with the annotation. So that is the only annotation that we have. So so what we showed is it is possible with very limited supervision to be able to do this kind of segmentation and bridge the domain gap. Very recently, in fact, we will be presenting this in ICCP 23 in early October, is the idea of fusing or using segmentation to fuse 2D and 3D information. So here I have the ground truth. This is the result with 2D segmentation. And here are the results with 3D, and then with the results with 2D plus 3D segmentation. So the sensors here that we had were with were RGB sensors and depth sensors. And the goal here was to be able to fuse information from the RGB and the depth sensors. So one of the interesting things about this problem, which I really like, is the fact that we started off with unimodal models. That is, we started off with models that were trained purely on RGB and purely on depth. So we do not need paired training data, because paired training data is hard to get in a large number of scenarios. For every scenario, we cannot go around obtaining paired training data, and we certainly cannot label that kind of data. So, but there is a lot of data available, especially for RGB. So the question is, how do we go from these unpaired unimodal models to be able to do inference on paired multimodal data? And this segmentation problem showed that we can do it. So the way we work on this is by looking into the inferences that we get from each of the channels. So from the image channel, we get a certain inference. From the depth, we get a certain inference. And then if these inferences match, then that tells us that there is something about these two models that it's giving me the same result. If the inferences do not match, then that tells me that probably those two portions do not match. And this could be used in order to come up with a fusion mechanism. So for example, when certain portions match, that means those portions are in agreement. And that could be used to say that both of these models, both of these unimodal models, are in agreement when these portions for this kind of data. And that could be used to refine the models, and to refine the fusion strategy. So this is about the image segmentation tasks. And so with this, I kind of, so as I said, I'm not going to go through all of the problems that we have worked on. I specifically focused on two specific problems. One was the motion segmentation in videos, and the other was the image segmentation in images. The underlying theme in this, and in fact, in all of our work that we have been doing over the last 5 years or so, has been to remove supervision from the entire process. And if we cannot do that, at least to be able to reduce that level of supervision. And that is what has motivated us in the problem of video moment retrieval. There, the goal is that the models are not trained or not trained with the labeling data that is on the end that provides fine-grained segments, but rather on very weak segments or weak labels that a particular activity exists in a particular video, and then we learn models to be able to retrieve the moments. In the segmentation, in the spatial segmentation task, the goal is that we are provided with labels that are at the level of an entire image, and we want to be able to learn or adapt a trained segmentation model to a new domain without requiring pixel-wise annotation of objects in that particular label. And with that, I I will stop here, and if there are any questions, I'm happy to take the questions. Thank you. Hello?
Hello, is
Yes,
there
sir,
any
you're
question?
audible. Somnata, are you there? Hello.
Someone is asking questions. Someone
Can you
has a
hear?
name. Yes, yes, go ahead. So I think there is a question here. No, it is from. Is anybody there from the organization team?
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
I'm here, sir.
Oh,
Go ahead. Go ahead. Close. See if anybody has any question, and then close the session.
Is he audible?
Hello, Somnath,
Hello?
please
Hello?
you
Yes, sir.
continue.
yes, sir. Yes, madam.
Hello?
Yes,
you're
Ponko, sir.
audible, sir.
Yes, yes. So there was disturbance in the communication anyway. So thank you, Professor Rachaudhuri, for your illuminating lecture. So now it's open to the audience for any question. Is there any question from the audience?
If there is no
Sir, I have
question,
a,
I can ask a question.
yes, please. Professor Dasgupta,
So
please.
the speaker, it seems this video processing is one of the area which has a lot of attention in AI field. How do you see that will change, particularly in audio, video, the technology improvement using AI?
So that's, I mean, I'm trying to think where to start. I mean, it's all over the place, right? So whether it's in, there could be national security applications where there are cameras all over and we need to identify, recognize activities, biometric recognition, then autonomous navigation, where we could use videos, be able to navigate in uncertain environments. It could be in commercial applications where people want better technologies on their phones or on their computers in order to be able to browse through large video databases. It could be healthcare, where video technologies could help with surgeries, for example. It could be logistics with large warehouses and how do you manage them. It could be agriculture and environmental monitoring. It's all over the place. Anywhere where you have cameras, most of the data is analyzed manually even now. Video or some of these computer vision methods are helping with the some of these computer vision methods are helping with reducing the effort, but there is still a long way to go before these methods can be significantly automated. Most of these tasks are very laborious and tedious, and it's very hard for a person to keep their attention over these large spans of video. So if there are methods which can focus the person on a certain segment or certain segments of the videos, then that could help in the overall the overall application pipeline.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
That I just to somebody.
Yes.
You start learning, be viewed as weekly supervised. That's a very good question, and yes, I agree. So weekly supervised is a very vague term in some sense. We used it in this particular problem in terms of providing labels that are at the level of a video sequence or at the level of an image, without providing labels, without providing more detailed labels. However, there are many ways in which weak supervision can be defined, and few shot is one of them. And few shot, if we can do few shot labeling, then yes, I think we can improve some of the performance. In fact, in one of these methods where we did the pseudo image labels, this one with the image labels. So one of the things that we did was the following. We had labels at the level of the entire image. That is, for example, a car or a tree or a building exists in the image. But we also had some few shot, had another experiment where we had some few shot labels where we provided basically a point label that this is a car, this is a building, this is a tree, without providing the detailed segmentation. So that is a few shot label. And that kind of label helped, did improve performance over just the image level labels. There is another question in the chat, another good question. Can you please elaborate on the RGB and depth signals being fused? Yeah. So here, the data was obtained. So the training data, we didn't have any training data. We just had pre-trained models. These pre-trained models were pre-trained source models were unimodal models. That is, one of the models was on 2D and another model was on the depth data, the 3D. But the inference side, we had data that was both 2D and 3D. And it was synchronized data between 2D and 3D. So for example, what you would have in an autonomous navigation problem, where you would have RGB cameras as well as depth signals, and you would need to combine the two. So what we showed here was that you could take the unimodal models, of which there are plenty, and then you could fuse them in the adaptation process. So the way this is done is you take the 2D, the 2D model, you pass your data through it, you obtain some labels, the pseudo labels. You pass your depth data through 3D model, you obtain the pseudo labels. And if the pseudo labels agree, then that means that for that kind of data, that is, the features that are present in the 2D, in the images and in the depth, those features correspond because the labels are corresponding. And that can be used to refine the inference process. So that can be used to drive the pseudo labeling so that in the next iteration, even more of those features agree and so on. So so that is the intuition. This is in the ICCV paper. It will be online. I am actually hoping today, and if it is not already online, so you can look into the details over there, but the intuition is there. Okay.
So any other question? Sir, I have a question. Hello?
Yes.
Am I audible?
Yeah.
Sir, I have a question. While labeling, there are two possibilities or two situations. One is the temporal aspect, and the other is the spatial aspect that you have discussed. So is there any, I mean, clubbing the information from these two sources together, making improved performance. Anything that you can?
Yeah. So it depends on the, if the task is segmentation over a video sequence, then yes, you could, if you have labels that are at the video level, and you also have labels that are at the image level, then you could combine the information from them. The problem is that we usually do not have data sets where both of these kinds of labels are available, because labeling is painful and a very, very tedious task. So typically we would have far more limited labels than, and so obtaining labels at the both image level as well as the video level is going to be challenging. And that is why we usually do not have that kind of labels to work with.
Thank you. Another question. Your discussion, how it can be extendable in real-time scenario. I mean, when there is time constraint on that, and the computation has to be completed within a stipulated time frame, something of that type. So, I mean, how that challenge can be taken up?
Yes. So that's a good question, and there are many ways in which it could be done. In fact, we are working on some of those problems. So among the different ways in which it could be done, one is to be able to speed up the algorithms themselves. Another approach could be to the network architecture. So do we need a very complex network in order to do some of these tasks, or can we work with a simpler architecture with a small performance gap? And that is essentially, so these could be different approaches that could be taken for this problem.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, I have a question. Yeah.
Please.
Hello, sir, am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is a very trivial question, maybe the fundamental. So maybe in case of when you are segmenting a multi-band image, color image, or say 4-5 band image, so how the thresholding based approach will work there? Should we convert the color image to gray image and then we segment that, or we consider the image as a whole and then we calculate the distance to which cluster will be?
No,
Yes,
you work with the original color image itself. I mean, you don't need to convert into a grayscale.
Or will it be separately the individual channels of the image, say RGB, or segmenting R separately, G separately, B separately, and then combine the thresholds?
No.
So as a whole, are you saying?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You can work with all the RGB channels, together.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
So, any other question from the audience? Okay, if there is no other question, it's time to conclude the session. So thank you, Professor Raichaudhuri, for your extremely important and challenging deliberation. So hope in days ahead we shall be in touch in more a meaningful way. So thank you once again for your illuminating lecture. Thanks from the IEEE Computational Intelligence Society Kolkata chapter, who is responsible for organizing this. So now let me hand over the baton to Somnath, who is anchoring today's event. Somnath,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So thanks to Professor Amit K. Raichaudhuri for the lecture on computer vision. and also Professor Dotto for chairing this session. So should I now proceed to offer the vote of thanks, or?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, so we are honored today to have the presence of numerous distinguished individuals at this fourth lecture series on artificial intelligence and evolving intelligence systems. So today we host the fourth session of this lecture series, and we are proud to witness participation of many participants from both academia and industry. And the presentations have given light to contemporary research challenges and opportunities in this field, and it will greatly benefit the participants. Moreover, this series of monthly we are organizing are successfully facilitating the formation of the consortium, bringing us close to our goal. We extend our heartfelt gratitude to the consortium led by Professor Dipankar Dasgupta and Dr. Arpan Pal. The active supports have been indispensable in bringing this event to realization. We would like to express our sincere thanks to Dr. Nivedita Majumdar and Professor Amit K. Roy Choudhury for their comprehensive lectures and engaging discussions. We'd also like to acknowledge the dedication of Professor Siddhartha Bhattacharya, Chair of IEEE CIS Kolkata, and Professor Paramatma Datto from Vishwabharati, who graciously chaired and moderated this lecture series. Our gratitude extends to all participants who attended to this lecture series. Your support has been invaluable, and we hope to receive more encouragement and participation in our future lecture series and all other events. Lastly, we would like to express our appreciation to IEEE CIS Kolkata team and IEEE Kolkata section for their solid support in organizing this lecture series and other events. Thank you all once again for your invaluable contributions and supports. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Somnath. Good night, everybody.
Thank you, Devaitos. Thank you. Bye bye.
Good night. Good night.
Okay, sir.
Good night.
Bye.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Devaitos,
Yeah, tell me.
we have not announced the information regarding our next.
Yeah, we will.
So we'll do that. We'll do
yeah,
that now later on.
Yeah, we will announce that a little bit later.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Good night.